Hey, Josh, thanks. This
meeting is being recorded.
Hi, this is Colonel John Baker, and I don't know if you guys can see my video. I thought I'd turn myself on just so that I can properly introduce a good friend of mine, Mr. Derek Boese. Derek is the general manager of the San Antonio River Authority and has been in the position just shy of a year. I've known Derek for 26 years. And I can tell you that he was the right guy for the right job at the right time. But Derek's here to talk to us today about his organization, their mission, and potential business opportunities. Derek is he's a military veteran, a former Army engineer officer. He's a decorated combat veteran from Iraq. He's a combat veteran of a different sorts, having also been the executive director of a levee district in New Orleans. And he is a licensed attorney. He's a licensed project management professional, and he's a true professional overall. He's been involved with SAME in the past, and we're honored to have him here with us today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Derek.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all today. And John, I feel super old. It's been 26 years, so that kind of blows my mind in its own way, going all the way back to Fort Riley. About me, I've been the general manager of the River Authority since May of last year. Just a quick bio in addition to what John said. So from 2015 until last year, I was in two different leadership positions in the Flood Protection Authority East in New Orleans. 2 years as the executive director for part of the system of Greater New Orleans, and then the last 4 years running the hurricane defense system for the Greater New Orleans region. Worked for two different national engineering firms, PBS&J, which then became Atkins, and then PSI, which is now Intertech, for active duty Army officer for 11 plus years, Iraqi freedom, and then Kuwait, and then a number of other different locations. My last tour was at the Army Engineer School at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. Civil engineering, bachelor's from Rice, engineering management, Missouri Rolla, and then Loyola University, New Orleans, Juris Doctor. I'm a licensed attorney in Louisiana. Done a variety of different things. So the River Authority facts, for those not totally familiar with the River Authority, and it kind of depends, as I've learned in my relatively brief time here in San Antonio. Created in 1937, we are a political subdivision of the state. We support 4 counties directly, Bexar County with San Antonio all the way down to Goliad, but we also handle a number of things for the entire San Antonio River watershed. Somewhat unique amongst river authorities in the state. Unlike most, we have an elected board of directors, 6 from Bexar County, and then 2 from each of our 3 downstream counties for a total of 12. We also have the ability to tax. That's one that goes hand in hand with having an elected board versus a board appointed by the governor. And we do not do water supply. We've done it previously. It is within our scope, but we've pretty much gotten out of that mission over the last few years. There geographically, you can see our watershed, and I won't go into detail, but it's a pretty big area. We're also heavily involved in Region 12 of which is a regional flood planning group that the state stood up across the state in different areas over the last couple of years. We handle all the administrative functions for Region 12 within the watershed. So floodplain mapping, trying to look at things, water, we said this in New Orleans, and it holds true here. Water does not care about political boundaries. And so this is part of the attempt by the state to look at things more broadly and not focus as much on, city limits or county limits, but look at everything as a watershed. Next, please. River Authority staff, just under 300 positions. We're not fully staffed. I'm sure y'all can empathize with that. It's a challenge to find people in certain positions nowadays. Within our, roughly 300 folks, a number of different types of engineering professionals, a lot of H&H focus, and then design and construction. We have environmental scientists, that's in the office, a field staff, and we have a certified lab. We run 4 wastewater treatment plants, primarily in the northeast part of Bexar County. We have most of our folks, I would say just over 50%, work in our landscape parks and maintenance operations. That includes, for those of you all familiar with the Mission Reach, the Museum Reach here in San Antonio. We have a number of other parks and areas that we maintain. We also have 41 dams, which fall under the NRCS program, some in Bexar County and then the rest down in Karnes. Program project managers, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. We do a lot of work on behalf of the city of San Antonio and Bexar County. Public communication, government affairs, typical. We have a major public education component focused primarily at K through 12, although we do work with universities too. And then your typical sort of standalone administrative and support staff. I referenced the elected board of directors. You can see all the folks there. They run 6-year terms and pretty much self-explanatory. Next. I always find it good to talk about whether, to whatever the organization that I'm speaking to give an idea of how we're organized internally. You see on the right side of the screen, sort of your standard administrative functions, HR, legal, IT. I have an assistant GM who's kind of serves as my chief of staff, the executive office, public communication and government affairs. And then I have a deputy general manager who does a lot of the heavy lifting. He runs our utilities departments. We have a manager there under him. Our technical services, which is where all of our engineering and environmental staff reside. And then a senior manager that oversees our facilities and all of our watershed and parks operations. Deputy GM is Rick Trefser. Finance is under him. He was the finance manager before he got elevated up. So that's why you see that there and not with the rest of the finance, the administrative functions. Next. So I mentioned we have a taxing authority. Again, fairly unique amongst river authorities. Current rate, you see there in the middle, 1.858 cents per $100 of assessed value. Roughly $36 million most recently. You can only use that for operations and maintenance activities. And we are the same tax rate. We don't have the ability currently to do different tax rates in different counties. So whatever it is, when the board sets it every year, it applies consistently amongst all 4 counties. Next. So this is our overall budget for the most recent fiscal year, a total of $318 million. Now that you may wonder, okay, your tax rate gets you $36 million. That's obviously significantly different. A big chunk of that comes from our utilities, roughly 100 million plus in terms of the fees we collect for the communities that we serve. And then a lot of that other money is in many ways a pass-through. We handle project and program management when needed or requested for the city of San Antonio and Bexar County. And so much of that money is a pass-through to us, and then we handle, the design and construction for some of their projects, parks, trails, sometimes flood control, you name it, but it's flowing through us. So that's why those dollars may not make sense, but there is a logical explanation. Next. So mission. Safe, clean, and enjoyable. And I'll say this in some more detail in the next slides. I think whenever a new leader comes into an organization, it's incumbent upon them to evaluate everything. And I don't think anything was broken when I got here, but I think it's smart to do a good assessment. My predecessor And the team had come up with that mission statement, and I think it still holds true. Next. So safe. One thing I did discover when I got here, there were a lot of different meanings or interpretations of what safe, clean, and enjoyable meant amongst my staff. So we've made a concerted effort over the last few months to better define that and ensure that everyone is pulling in the same direction. Safe was probably the easiest for people to relate to. And I think I would summarize that as prepare, prevent, and respond. We are not first responders, but we support first responders with a number of different things. Many folks know us through our flood mapping, our floodplain mapping. So we do work directly on behalf of FEMA. We're one of the few public entities nationally that actually, has the confidence of FEMA to perform that work. So we do that for our watershed, and they pay us, which is always nice. We run flood control dams, and then we do many other things, but we also do a predictive flood modeling, which is a fairly new development. You see it in some of the other major urban areas in Texas. We have our own version of it. One of my staff members is both a licensed professional civil engineer and a meteorologist, actually a retired Navy guy. And that combination has allowed us to do a number of things, which is also, we take National Weather Service data, we take all of our stream and river gauge data and a number of other sources, and we are feeding we have software running all the time, but as we look for major rainfall events that are coming, we're feeding information to the emergency operations centers here in Bexar County and the city of San Antonio every 15 minutes to try to give them predictions on where you're going to see the major rain come, which might result in flooding, closed water, low water crossings, and that allows them to possibly block those low water crossings, reroute emergency management services, and just stay ahead of the weather as best they can. It's been a success, and it's about a year old, and we are in negotiations right now to export the same abilities south to Wilson County and Karnes County. Next. Dams, just a quick snapshot. Nothing as exciting as I used to deal with in New Orleans, admittedly, but still very important to flood control in the region. Typical picture of one of our dams, and that's just a quick snapshot on the screen of where you see the different ones in Bexar County and Karnes. So clean. Whoop.
Hold on.
Jump back one. There you go. Thank you.
There you go. I think somebody might have a hot mic out there too.
This is just a quick example of the predictive flood modeling, and I won't dwell on it because I know time goes by fairly quick. Keep going, Josh, please. There we go. Clean. So lots of different ways to define clean. We started to settle on what does that water quality look like, a healthy habitat, and biodiversity. And then what does it translate to into metrics? For us, that's nitrate, that's E. coli, and then some different habitat and biodiversity scores, which if we have a report card you can find on our website that dives into this in some more detail. Next. So one way we do this, like I said, 4 wastewater treatment plants. If you want to talk about the way that we probably make the most direct impact on water quality in the region, it's through the treatment that we provide and the water that eventually makes its way into the San Antonio River and its tributaries. Next. Water quality data. So we have our scientist team is always out monitoring and sampling. Some of that is through automatic monitors. A lot of it is direct field operations. We bring that back. We work with the state to provide the data throughout the region. And then we also feed that to our engineers who are doing water quality models that go hand in hand with our floodplain mapping abilities as well, to try to say where can we work with our partners or on our own make a difference in the water quality levels. And that might be through green infrastructure type of features. It might be making recommendations to treatment operations for some of the partners. But we are trying to take field data, modeling data, put the two together to make recommendations or take actions to improve water quality. Next. And trash. This is a big one. If you live in the San Antonio area, you have maybe fortunately or unfortunately seen our trash campaign, which does include me on some TV commercials and public information announcements. But essentially every piece of crap that somebody drops on the ground in the San Antonio watershed eventually makes its way to a creek, which makes its way to the San Antonio River. We have a major campaign that we kicked off about 6 months ago, where we are trying to get the public better educated of the problems that we face. We literally, just in the Mission Reach alone below downtown San Antonio, take thousands of pounds of trash out a year. I think last year was roughly in the 150,000 pounds of trash just in that small stretch of river. So there's a major education component. That doesn't even count what the city of San Antonio took out. I think they drained the Riverwalk a couple weeks ago. I believe they took out 50,000 pounds of trash just from the Riverwalk area alone. It collects everywhere. So we're trying to inform everyone. It makes our work life easier because it's our crews or others that are cleaning it up. But it also has a significant detriment to the health of the river when all this crap starts to pile up. Next. And enjoyable. Focusing on fun, recreation, getting people to interact with the river in a positive way. We live, a lot of our revenue and a lot of our, the vast majority of our population is in Bexar County. Heavily urban environment, and not a lot of people always know that the river is there, or they have different perceptions of how clean it is. So we work to educate them and give opportunities for kids or the public to interact. Mission Reach, you can walk, bike, fish, do all those types of things. We run a series of parks up in all 4 counties where we want people to get connected to nature. We've seen a huge spike, which is a good thing, in our usage. Mission Reach roughly doubled during COVID. We saw about 1 million people use the Mission Reach in 2020. So, when people were locked down, when they couldn't get go to work, school, whatever, but they needed to get out of their house, we were extremely fortunate that we had the facilities that allowed people to get out there and really enjoy things. Next. Highlight some of the things that we maybe are well known for. The Museum Reach, which is the Pearl, if you're familiar with that, just north of the Riverwalk, sort of the downtown area, just under 1.5 miles. Major investment by the county, by Bexar County, in that area. It does not serve a flood control purpose in that direct area. It's more of a urban ecosystem restoration and recreational feature. Next. And then Mission Reach. Mission Reach actually fulfills a number of different functions. It is a flood control feature. The work was done a little over 10 years ago. Corps of Engineer project, Bexar County and the San Antonio River Authority, plus the city of San Antonio itself. What was a, in very bad shape urban river that the Corps had done work on, I think in the 60s, 70s timeframe or so, in sort of typical urban Corps work at that time. Very, concrete drainage ditch, pretty ugly sort of thing. Turning that into an ecosystem and, an actual urban restoration of a major ecosystem while maintaining the actual flood control function and adding the recreational aspects along the way. Next. I don't remember the millions of dollars. I want to say $300 million plus went into that. So current and future initiatives. San Pedro Creek is under construction right now. Phase 1.1 is open. Go back one if you would, Josh. Phase 1.1 is open. 1.2 and 1.3, which are right through the heart of the downtown area, are under construction as we speak. Actually, phase 2 just is underway as well. 3 and 4 going. We just got the okay from the county to start design and move towards construction in those phases. So design build contract, HDR is the prime engineer and SUNT is the prime contractor on those $300 million plus project when it's all said and done. But no flood control function for the majority of it until you get down to the very sort of the lower 20% or so. But trying to get, again, what was a pretty ugly drainage type of ditch that ran through urban downtown and make it something that people can enjoy and be much more natural. Next. Quick snapshot, and I know that Josh and Dick in the post here have copies of my PDF slides or my slides that they'll make available, so you can look at this in your own time. This is just a quick snapshot of many of the things we're working on within Bexar County at the moment. San Pedro Creek Culture Park, out on the west side. We're on behalf of the city. We're doing trails along Alazan, Zarzamora, and Apache Creeks. We've got wastewater treatment expansions going on in the northeast part of the county. That's what you see 5, 9, and 12 up there. And more is coming. So next. That's San Pedro Creek. I already talked about that, but 1 is completed, 1.2 and 1.3. That's actually a little outdated. They're underway. Phase 2 is underway, and 3 and 4 are kicking off. Next. Some good pictures of what this looks like. So if you're familiar with the downtown, this is right by UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio, in their area where they're building a new, I want to say it's a cybersecurity data center type of facility for education. We're right next to that. So on the left, you see what it looks like. On the right, you see what it's going to look like. Here by roughly October is when it should open next year, or this year, excuse me, this year. Again, phase 2, a little further downstream, but the current and where we're going. Some project highlights, utility projects, some major things underway. Next. Out in that northeast corner of Bexar County, we have our Martinez 4 treatment plant and collection system. We are doing some major upgrades. It's public knowledge, the development that has gone and growth that have gone on in Bexar County, and particularly in our service areas for our wastewater treatment plants. We cannot keep up. We've had some SSO violations, mostly flow, fortunately, not water quality, but just flow, because there's so much development. So we are doing some major million-gallon per day expansions of both treatment plants and some of our connection lines. Next. There you go. So 0.25 MGD to 2 MGD. And the reality is when it finishes next year, we are already starting to talk about the need that we're probably going to have to do another expansion because the development is so great. Next. Same thing there at Salatrio, adding 1.5 MGD. We do use alternative delivery methods depending on the need. So we do have some progressive design build. And I should have mentioned earlier, San Pedro Creek is actually CMAR, construction management at risk. Next.
$7 million.
It keeps going. Whoever said that, yes, there's a lot of money flowing. So project highlights in this particular area when it comes to floodplain mapping. Go ahead. So we are the administrator for the Regional Flood Planning Group. Region 12 is designated by the state. We report up through that group to the Texas Water Development Board with a number of different interests. So I'm on the board representing river authorities, the Nefi Garza from City of San Antonio, their drainage director, is the current president of the board. We have environmental interests, NGOs, development community, and the goal is to all work together to make sure that floodplain mapping and mitigation measures are being looked at comprehensively. Next. We are working through overall remapping of our entire floodplain. As you can see there, we've got some studies that's a little out of date, but we will be done with good chunks of it by the end of this year, and then we will move on to other phases. If you're interested in more specifics, some are on our website, or you can always email me and I can put you in touch with our modeling staff for the specific timeline. But we're a little bit delayed on some of these, but again, major progress that continues to go on, doesn't ever seem to stop, to be honest. Go ahead. Watershed master planning integration, pretty self-explanatory. We do a lot of support to our communities in the region, especially some of the smaller cities, and help them advise them on what they can do. You know, our partners at the city of San Antonio and Bexar County are very sophisticated, and we are, I would say, equal partners with them when it comes to Bexar County itself and how we tackle problems. Not all of our other communities have the same resources. We do a lot of advisory efforts with them. Next. Water quality modeling. This is something we are working on refining. We've got some very broad scale water quality models. At the moment, we are trying to get those more detailed and refine the data and the modeling so we can actually take a much smaller area, 1 to 2 square miles, and say, okay, what does the water quality look like in that particular footprint, and what methods could be done to make it better, to do mitigation measures. That is underway, not done yet, but a pretty interesting thing that we are working towards. Next. All right, where do we go next? Some major efforts and initiatives that are taking a lot of my staff's time and focus, and for a good reason. Next. So Bexar County Rivers and Creeks. We have just signed between all three parties here, Bexar County, City of San Antonio, and the River Authority, a tri-party interlocal agreement, which essentially any one of us can contract with the other or with both of the other parties to do work on their behalf. And that's the basis for the Bexar County Rivers and Creeks program. 25 river and creeks projects, trails, restoration, and drainage. We may do some additional park support for Bexar County as well. The river and creek portion is by itself $240 million over the next 10 years. They did not do a bond. They go back one, please. They instead chose to do a capital investment program using existing funds and manage it that way. Kicking off right now, we're in negotiations with them to be the project manager, program manager. We are the program manager, but the individual projects, including the Spirit Reach, which would extend the mission reach from the northern end of Brackenridge Park in San Antonio up to the Blue Hole, which is the headwaters of the San Antonio River. Extend the trail there. There's a lot of complicated H&H to get under Hildebrand, if you're familiar with San Antonio, and that where the river goes underneath there. That's underway. There's a trail project out on Zarzamora Creek on the west side. There's a feasibility study of the Link project, which is an effort to look at connecting the Salado Creek to the San Antonio River, more on the east side of the city. And then there's actually a zoo well program. There's a water well, taps into the Edwards Aquifer in Brackenridge Park that feeds the zoo. It is at the end of its life. And so we are in the process of designing and constructing a new replacement well for that. Those are the first ones in the queue. and with some recent news with Westside Creeks, which leads me to the next one. Next slide. There we go. So Westside Creeks. This was in the news fairly recently. Westside Creeks, the Corps and the River Authority did a feasibility study roughly 10 plus years ago, actually about 12, to look at ecosystem restoration on the west side of these four creeks: San Pedro, Apache, Alazan, and Martinez. The Corps had gone in the 60s through the 80s and done urban flood control features, basically large drainage ditches, some of them concrete lined. The River Authority have worked, got a feasibility study completed, and said there is a federal interest in restoring the river in these, or these creeks in these drainage areas. A lot of work, frankly, a lot of lobbying and a lot of effort over a number of years, and it really ramped up over the last year. And we were successful in the infrastructure bill that recently passed in getting the federal government to obligate through the Corps $75 million, which at a minimum, which is the federal cost share for the entire $115 million project. We anticipate those costs are going to go up. They're a little bit dated, but this is now underway. We are, next slide. Brief history. Bottom line is what I just said. Corps channelized the creeks. Now we're going to restore them while maintaining the original flood control purpose. I should note, those don't get you, those channels by themselves don't get you to the 100-year rain event protection. They get you to about 80% of that. But we're not going to decrease the capacity at all through the restoration. Next. Nice schematic feasibility rendering of what this might look like. Some people have said, it's sort of mission reach light. That may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think if you're familiar with the mission reach, that's what we would like to get to, is something to look like that and really make a pleasant, urban stream or river on that west side of town, which has been historically neglected over the years. Next. So $75 million in the Corps' work plan came out towards the end of January. Right, we are the local sponsor. Bear County, through their Rivers and Creeks program, has designated the local match, so that roughly 35% share. We are, next slide. We are in negotiations with the Corps. It's out of the Fort Worth district for the project partnership agreement. We're hoping that'll get done by late spring, early summer. And then design will kick off, taking 18 to 24 months. For all the AEs in the room, we are not handling the procurement for the design. That will be handled by the Fort Worth district. We are being consulted on it, but you'll have to direct any procurement questions you have to the Fort Worth district. The other thing, we are in our, I wouldn't say infancy, but fairly early on, we are looking to partner with the city and the county using their own funds. Can we leverage the major federal investment going in on the west side into complementary or synergistic area projects? That might be amenities such as parks and recreation. It could be drainage features. It could be, frankly, what we would like to see is multi-benefit, where in the simplistic view, the neighborhood is looking for a park, but they also have a flooding issue. Let's combine the two and make that park serve as a detention or retention basin during a heavy rain event. We're taking it to a much higher level than that with our suggestions and schematic ideas, but that is what we would like to do. Next. All right, so for those of you, well, I'm sure you're all aware, you're consultants, and I've been there. The city of San Antonio has a bond going to the voters in May, $1.3 billion bond that covers housing, drainage, streets and transportation, parks and facilities. We've been taking their bond program that their council just approved and looking for recommendations or making recommendations to them on those same sort of complementary or synergistic ideas. which might include, if you're going to do, next slide, because I think I have a good example. One more. There we go. So we took a sample project on Brazos Street, which is out on the west side of San Antonio. We took a whole bunch of data, GIS layers, community input reports that have been done, stakeholder engagement, and tried to go through and say, okay, if the city's going to invest, I think it ended up being a $7.5 million improvement to Brazos Street, what else can be done? How can you take into account equity, socioeconomic, racial data, resiliency data when it comes to flood control, floodplain maps, public health and safety, whether that's vehicle accidents, pedestrian accidents, heat islands, and then also even connectivity. Where's the green spaces? How can we connect people? Next slide. So we took a shot at this. This is an example of one of the things we've suggested to the city. Don't just redo the street, but you've got an urban heat island smack in the middle of that project. Look at cool paving and tree planting and other features for the city-owned natatorium that's right there. You've got Alizon Creek, which is going to be one of the creeks the ecosystem restoration Westside Creek project handles. The city has already put a trail in there. How can we add additional trailheads and pedestrian-friendly walking spaces to get from Brazos Street to the green space on the trail? And then as they design the street itself, what can they do to add some green infrastructure to help manage the stormwater and the water quality that's going to eventually flow into the creek? We're talking to the city about this. They like the idea. The council members seem to like the idea. So we're going to be working with them to make recommendations, you know, assuming the bond project is approved, program is approved by the voters. Next. All right, woo, that was a lot of talking. So there's my contact info. And we have a pretty thorough website. I will say it's not always the easiest website to peruse. We're going to overhaul that in the next year or so, but there is a lot of data on there. So I'm happy to take any questions. One thing I will say, if you have a question about an active solicitation that's out on the street and advertised right now, I can't answer that. We have very strict procurement rules, and all communication has to go through our contracting office if you do have a question. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments or feedback.
Yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask them, or just type them in the chat box, either way.
Hey, Derek, that was quite a bit of information. Is this PowerPoint available?
Hey, Jade. Jade and I know each other from New Orleans. Yeah, I don't know where the post is going to post it, but absolutely be available.
It's up there. It's already up there, Derek. I just have to unlock it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dick.
Hey, Derek, this is Lars Zetterstrom. I think you're pretty clear. I just want to confirm for the non-federal sponsor's responsibility for Westside Creeks, you don't intend on doing any work in kind at all. All of the architecture, engineering, and design will be solicited through the Fort Worth district.
Hey, Lars. I owe you an email, by the way. I just got a little overwhelmed. Yes, broadly speaking, yes. The heavy lifting for design for Westside Creeks will be handled through the Fort Worth district. We will do some work in kind, but we're in negotiations for what that exactly will look like. You know, the typical LERD stuff is our responsibility. We would like to do a little bit more of the specific ecosystem design. We've got a lot of, excuse me, a lot of, that's what happens when I talk too long. We have a lot of expertise in-house for that. But that is, because it's so new and newly announced, the project team from the Corps just came down last week. But the vast majority of design will be handled through the Fort Worth district, with maybe a few exceptions.
I appreciate the response. Thank you so much, Derek.
I got
Hey,
one.
Derek, John Baker here. Hey,
Go
hey,
ahead.
that was a great presentation. Thank you. Lots of information for the audience. The question that I've got, given that we have some first-time members and maybe some folks that haven't done work with the San Antonio River Authority before, for the work that that the River Authority is soliciting, are there any specific qualifications or processes that our industry partners should know before competing for your work? Over.
Yeah, no, John, great question. So the things that we're handling for our partners, we will handle the procurement, and it will be advertised on our website through our normal, procurement methods. When it comes to selection, what we often see, and I will say every task order that we negotiate with the city or the county under that interlocal agreement, we negotiate those separately. So the requirements may change some, but we anticipate that depending on the funding source, the county or the city will have a member of their staff on the selection committee. And the other thing that we are working through are Swimbi requirements, DBE hub. Everybody uses a different term, but the city and the county say Swimbi, small minority, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses. Don't know exactly what the requirements will be, but it will likely generally follow what the city or the county currently has in place, and it will be a big emphasis. I can tell you that the River Authority has not historically done the best job of tracking or managing Swimbi participation. We've done pretty well at local businesses, but not necessarily Swimbi. We are working to correct that. And so I would say to you, if you're on this call or a member of the professional community in the consulting world or the construction community, and you're looking to work on any of these projects, Swimbi participation will be a big deal. I can't tell you if there's a specific goal or not because those are being negotiated, but we are looking to emphasize it. And so I would encourage you to work with those types of firms to emphasize it as well.
Hey, Derek, it's Josh. I have one.
Yeah, Josh.
So I know you've been there only about 8 months or so, but when you think, 5 years down the road, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night in regards to the River Authority in about 5 years?
I would say at the moment, and I think we will have a better handle on this in the next 4 months or so, are our capital requirements. We don't have a good handle, and I say capital, that's not just major facilities or parks or whatever, but that includes the operations and maintenance requirements that come with it. We are kicking off a 10-year, I'll say capital outlay, but really, how do we budget? What is coming down the road? I'll give you an example. We have 4 parks, 3 parks that we own currently, park land that we own currently, that we are in the master planning phase for, that are just basically sitting there more on the southern side of Bexar County. And then one that we're about to get through another mechanism. There is a passion within the River Authority and a lot of our partners for more green space, more parks, more of those types of facilities, which is great. There's the initial capital outlay that comes from building those, which our estimates right now are $3 million to $14 million per park. So there's that initial outlay. Where does that money come from? But then there are the maintenance and the updates that are required, and then there are the staffing requirements that come with it. And I don't know the answer yet, but it's not going to be a shock to me if our analysis says that we can build one of those right now, and we can maintain one of those that same one for the indefinite future based on our taxes and income or revenue streams, but we can't do all of it. And so we need to manage that. That's a big deal. We did that in my previous job in New Orleans. The magnitude was a lot more. When you're staring down over a 50-year period, a federal cost share of $1 billion, just under, to keep the federal system at the 100-year level, the hurricane defense system, it takes on a pretty dramatic emphasis. Nothing that dramatic here, but we need to do the same thing, and we're working through that. And what can we maintain? What can our partners maintain, and how do we do it to the standards that we hold ourselves to? A very high standard. So I think at the moment, that is probably the biggest thing that keeps me up at night.
Thank you. I think we probably got time for one or two more questions if anybody has any more. It's like there's one that just popped in the chat. It says, how many projects has SARA used progressive design build as an alternative delivery method, and has this delivery method saved time and money?
That's a good question. I don't know a specific number off the top of my head for that. I can tell you that San Pedro is probably the biggest, and it's ongoing. That's CMAR, Construction Management at Risk. Progressive design build, I think it's only been used at our utilities. And as for, and it's underway, a couple of projects are underway. Has it saved time and money? The jury is still out on that because they're going through the process. Well, money, the jury is still out. Time, yes, absolutely. And I think broadly speaking, that's probably pretty typical of design build projects. Cost may or may not save money, but time it should if done properly.
Thank you. Is there one more out there? All right. Well, thank you, Derek, for that great presentation. Everybody could just give me a quick virtual round of applause for Derek, please.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it, man.
And then Derek, we always, just as a token of our appreciation, we like to give out our coveted mug. So if you could just please make sure that Dick has the address you'd like that be sent to. And thank you again. And I just got a couple more quick announcement slides, and then we'll get you guys back on your day.